So this is my stats discussion 5 post. And so the variables I chose from the data set to analyze in this video are the amount of XP points earned and location. So for location, I just did the difference between Iowa City or a remote location, and then for the XP points, instead of doing these specific numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 0, I just chose to do whether the students did the XP points or not. So I just did 0, and anything above 1 was all grouped into the category of 1. So the first thing I analyzed was remote versus Iowa City locations, and so right off the bat, I decided that my success rate, or my 1, was going to be remote location, and my 0 was going to be Iowa City, just because I am not taking the class in Iowa City, so I assigned myself the 1. So from this frequency table, I highlighted all this information, and then I just went to insert, recommended charts, and then a graph popped up. All these graphs pop up, but the one that I chose is this one. And so on my y-axis, I have the proportion of students, and on my x-axis, I have my 2 bars. So these bars represent, it is clearly skewed to the left because there were more students in the 0 or in the Iowa City group than in the remote location group. But realistically, it's only the difference of 8 students. So it looks like a really big jump here, but it's not that bad. So the next thing I did from here was I calculated my proportion, or my p-hat, and I did this simply by taking my number of successes, or my 1s, and dividing it by the total number of students, which was 52 students, and we got a p-hat of 0.456, blah blah blah. So I just rounded that to 0.46. So as you can see, p was 0.46, and I put that right here in the green arrow to show where that would be. From there, I needed to get my standard deviation of the sample population, or since that's a mouthful, we're also referring to that as SE. So I started here, and I took my p, or 0.46, which I rounded it to, multiplied by 1 minus p, divided by 92. Then I took this number, and I took the square root of that, and I got about 0.05 is what I would round it to. So from there, from that point, I was able to calculate the margin of error in the upper and lower limits of this proportion. So to calculate the margin of error, I simply just took my SE, my standard deviation of the sample population, and I multiplied it by our 95% confidence interval that we're looking for. So the 95% confidence interval that we wanted was 1.96. So that's about a margin of error of 10%, roughly. So not too good, not too bad, nothing to really be concerned about. But then from there, to find the upper limit of this, I simply just I did the same thing. I took my p-value plus 0.96 times the standard deviation, and then for the lower value, I did the same thing, only minus that. So those gave us our upper and lower limits of about 0.56 and 0.46. So here on my number line, as this is 0.5 and this is 0.46, we have it from about 0.46 to about 0.56 right here is what I would say that is pretty much representing. Actually, I think this looks a little big, so I'm just going to squeeze it down a little bit. Yeah, I think that fits my image more. So with that information, I can scroll down and I can say we, or I, am 95% confident that in the population of students taking elementary statistics online at the University of Iowa, the proportion who take the class remotely is between 0.46 and 0.56, or 46 to 56%. Then I just simply repeated this exact process on this page, only with XP points earned or no XP points earned. So my success I assigned to if you earn the XP point, and my failure I assigned to if you did not earn the XP point. So from there, I calculated my p-value once again, and so I took my success rate of 64, or my 1s, divided by the total number of students, 92, to get my p-hat of about 0.7. So that's about 0.7, 0.70. Then from there, I had to get my standard deviation of the sample population once again. So I did the same thing. I did our p times 1 minus p divided by 92, and I took the square root of that to get that to be about 0.05. So roughly 5%. No, roughly 5. Oh my goodness. Roughly 0.05, excuse me. Then for the margin of error, this is what I was jumping ahead to. So then up here, I just took our standard deviation of the sample population and I multiplied it by our 95% confidence interval of 1.96 to get about 9%, or 0.09 of a margin of error. Using all this information, once again, I calculated the upper and lower limits to find my limits of our confidence interval. So I took our p plus 1.96 times our standard deviation, and then I took our p minus 1.96 times our standard deviation. From there, we get about 0.79 and 0.60. So our lower estimate would be 0.6, which would be about here, and our upper estimate is about 0.79, which I estimated to be about there, considering this is 0.70. So from that, I can say we are 95% confident that in the population of all students taking elementary statistics online at the University of Iowa, the proportion who earn XP on exams is between 0.6 and 0.79, or 60 to 79%, excuse me. Thanks for listening.